The following interview with Sig Rogich was recorded before the passing of former President George H.W. Bush. Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, the legendary Sig Rogich for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers tapings in Las Vegas are brought to you by the Las Vegas Metro Chamber of Commerce.
All systems check. All right, Sam, let's go check out some D&D roof.
Hey, Ken. From up here, you can really tell the difference a quality D&D roof makes.
You're right, Sam. With our experience, knowledge, and staff, nothing compares to a D&D roof.
Hey, look down there. It's our D&D roofing crew.
I'll bank the plane so we can get a closer look. Sam! You watch your company's bottom line, and I'll cover the top of it.
Nearly 200,000 Nevadans work in retail businesses, supporting families and the community. Nevada's retail businesses generated over $2 billion in sales tax revenue in 1 year, including nearly $700 million to help our schools. Shop around and see all that Nevada's retailers offer our state.
We're the Retail Association of Nevada, representing thousands of Nevada businesses.
Businesses that work for Nevada.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always delighted to welcome back to the program Sig Rogich. His history in politics goes back to the Reagan and Bush administrations. He was ambassador to Iceland. He is the president of Rogich Communications. I go on for about 3 days just listing all the things you've done, but we have questions to ask you. So the first one I want to ask you was, my understanding is that you were recently at an event celebrating Paul Laxalt with 3 former governors, the current governor. What was that like?
Well, it was emotional for me. Paul was kind of a mentor to me. Almost like a father figure, for sure, and I was blessed to be part of that extended family. I delivered one of the eulogies at that event in Carson City a week or so ago, and it was a reflection on things that I've done in the state, a lot of them with Paul Laxalt, traveling around the state. He introduced me to places like Silver Peak and Gabbs and Schurz and Winnemucca and Elko and Ely and name it, you know, we traveled the state together. And I think Paul was a sensational governor. He was only there 4 years, but he introduced corporate gaming to Nevada, which transformed the state. And he and Michael Callahan had an extraordinarily good friendship. One a Republican, one a Democrat, in terms of trying to do what was best for the state. And I never quite forgot that. Paul didn't believe, and either did Michael Callahan, that these large casino companies should be able to own more than 4 properties. They thought that would be unhealthy. In case something happened to one of them, it would have an economic impact that was overwhelming. And we saw that happen. You know, we only got 3 major operators in the state: Caesar's Palace, Caesar's World, you know, MGM, and Fertitas. And 2 of the 3 went bankrupt. The 3rd was not far behind. But when that happens, it's dangerous. So I always remember him talking to Michael Callahan about that issue, and I never quite forgot it. And I think that history will show that we should have held the line and not allowed such a great infusion of power among 3 corporate giants.
Do you think that there is enough diversification now, both in the North and South, that if there were a recession, short of the magnitude of a 9/11 type situation where all the air traffic was shut down for days, that Nevada would suffer to that great of an extent?
Well, I think we have probably a little more risk factor than most, because, you know, you've got 3 essential companies that run it all, you know, in Nevada, all things considered. Wynn is an anomaly, and so is the Sands Group, and Peppermill in the north, of course. But when you have that much power among 3 corporations, they can't afford to go on strike ever. So that makes it very difficult on the small operators to keep pace, because they have to, the larger ones have to give in. So there's that factor. And then when you have a bad recession like we had, there's no cash flow to fix up the properties. So the CapEx, they call it, you know, the back of the money going into refurbish those rooms and carpets and things that need to be done about every 5 years. They weren't done for a long, long time. So you're seeing the aftermath of that. But listen, we've got good operators. I'm not against these companies, don't get me wrong. I think Fertittas are great operators and great citizens. And I think that MGM equally so. And I look at Caesars and what they're doing. I just don't think you should allow the state to be controlled by three major entities per se.
Were you surprised when Tilman Fertitta offered to take Caesars under his wing?
No, not really. I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. You know, I think it's probably a smart move for him. Gives him you know, a footprint across the country, maybe around the world. He's a tough operator. You know, I've only met him a couple times in passing, but his property in Texas, in Dallas, was extraordinary. That hotel he built there is off the charts. Was it Houston or Dallas? I can't remember
Houston,
which.
I believe.
Houston, is it? Yeah, but it's a beautiful property. And he builds things first class, so I think that's all good.
Yeah, he's an amazing man. I mean, just, you know, the way he came into the state with the Golden Nugget and what he's done with that and down in Laughlin, but then as it expands across the country. I wanted to ask you about something that I was so excited, and you were the first person I thought of when the news came out, because you've worked on this for so long, was Express West being purchased by this Florida company, and now Richard Branson being involved, and a public offering, and seeming to get the operations more in line with what would be profit making and without government funding. So there's a lot to unpack there, but you've got to be pretty excited.
Well, I'm really
project,
not part of this new group per se.
Right,
you know,
but I mean,
but I'm very happy with it because I think it's great for our state, great for the town. I want to see it built. You know, I have some doubts that they'll get to where they want to get to.
Really?
Because I think the costs are extraordinary. You know, we penciled it out. You know, we could never come up with less than $7 to $9 to $10 billion to do it. So I don't know how you do it for a lot less than that. But I give them their due. Although I don't think the Florida model is the best model. The one they have there is not really a great product.
Why?
I don't think it's been finished quite yet. It doesn't have the ridership that they expected it to have, and it's slow. It's not a high-speed train per se. Having said that, the fact that we're laying tracks and not having to have shared tracks with freight, which always take precedent over passenger travel. That's why a lot of these Amtrak trains are late. They got to pull over and let the freight trains come when they have shared, you know, track. I think it's great for the town. The I-15 corridor is a mess. You know, there's times it can take 10, 11, 12 hours to get there if there's an accident to get to Southern California, and that's not healthy. So I think the train is a good thing, and I think the eventuality is it'll come to fruition. I'm just not sure what the final model will look like when it's all said and done.
And one of the problems, as I understand it, is that the cost of building actually high-speed rail versus doing 150 miles an hour, which is not considered high-speed rail, is because of the grade. The differential in the cost because of that grade is what holds it back.
Well, there's a lot of technical factors there that are too complicated to get into, but you're on track, so to speak, no pun intended. There's a lot of those things that I learned a lot. You know, Tony Marnell knows more about it than most people. Really, he did an extraordinary job. And Anthony, his son, has done a great job as well in following up and putting this thing together, really. So I think it's a work in progress. I'm very cautiously optimistic it'll come to play. I think it'll be great for the state, certainly great for Southern Nevada, but whatever happens here is good for the state.
All right, let's take a break. More with Sig Rogich when we come back.
Tamarack Junction is South Reno's hotspot with over 450 of the latest slots and video games. Sully's Sports Bar, the Dining Car Restaurant, William Hill Sportsbook, and the Tamarack Steakhouse and Lounge. We're just north of the Summit Mall in South Virginia. Yeah.
How do you shed some light on a better economy? Start with growth inspired by Valley Electric Association. We're a member-owned power company that puts Nevada first, and we're doing big things, like providing prosperity by securing renewable energy projects. For Nevada, that means more jobs and more opportunities, all for a strong statewide economy. In other words, together, we're doing powerful things. Visit us at vea.coop to learn more.
The Tamarack Junction Steakhouse is known for signature steaks, handcrafted cocktails, and world-class wines. Join us Thursdays and Friday nights from 4:30 to 6:30 in the Steakhouse Lounge for live music, gourmet plates, and well-priced wines, just north of the Summit Mall on South Virginia.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Sig Rogich. Just wanted to finish up on discussing the train. You were in the break talking about the difference between a place like China and approving high-speed rail versus the United States.
Well, in China, I think from start to finish, it took 2 or 3 years to build a high-speed train from Beijing to Hong Kong and Macau. Here, it took 12 years before construction even started just to get the environmental impact statement. And it cost something like $55 million to do it. And something's got to give. You can't have this bureaucracy, this layer upon layer of regulation to a degree that it impedes the opportunity to build something like a high-speed train. But when we went through the hearings, I think we had 21 hearings. We had something like 20 different agencies, from Friends of the Mojave to the Interior Department to the Justice Department, the state of California, the state of Nevada, the Sierra Club, the committee in Washington, the Federal Railroad Authority, the Surface Transportation Board. It goes on and on and on. And the eventuality is people say it ain't worth it. So you lose progress, when you have too much. And that's the irony. Progressives, as they call themselves, are big champions of more and more bureaucracy. And that's not progress. That's not progressive.
Well, and the irony is that certainly in the beginning, you had the support of Senator Reid. You couldn't have had a more highly placed person in federal government to assist, and yet it didn't make any difference.
Well, he did the best he could, I think. They wanted to extend. They have something like, I'm going to say it's probably now $45 billion in the Federal Railroad Infrastructure Fund, RIF they call it. RIFF. And in order to borrow that money, the only ones that really borrow it are Amtrak, and they've got it all predetermined. But if you want to use that money, they want you to put a contingency in place there of like $1 billion or something. And that's just a contingency. So if the cost was $7 billion, it goes to $8 billion. So you can't finance these kinds of things. Banks say that's not going to work. The numbers don't stack up. In other words, it's another layer of bureaucracy. So anyway.
Well, and when you look at California and the travails that they're having with trying to build a line between Los Angeles and San Francisco, they're going to have something fabulous in the Central Valley that'll run about 5 miles. But not in our lifetime is it going to connect to those major cities.
Well, no. You think that they will. They've got so much invested in it now, they can't let it go. And it's a state that, has to have something like that, with all that's happening there.
Let's change topics here to Genting. It's very nice to see it coming vertically out of the ground now. You worked on that project for a long time. Are you still involved with
Yes, I am.
those folks?
Yes.
When's the anticipated opening of this property?
I think it's a couple years from now. They've done everything they said they were going to do. The world just changed around them. The economics changed, and that was a difference maker. And then they had this beautiful design concept, and then the convention center said they're going to build up to the Strip. So they thought, well, why are we building all this convention space? So they had to go back and redraw, and it goes on and on. So, but it's going to be a beautiful property. There's an amazing amount of attention to detail. I think it'll be extraordinary, and I think we'll be proud of it as a state.
They have a huge property in New York. They have a huge property in Singapore. Do you think that they're going to want to bid on Japan as well?
I do. I can't speak for them, but I do, and I think that they're going to get one.
Really?
I do. I mean, they're the only investment-grade gaming company in the world. That means they have no debt. And I don't know how many billions of dollars they have cash in the bank, but it's a lot. And they also own a 15,000-room casino in Malaysia. 15,000 rooms. Just imagine 3 MGMs.
Amazing.
So
they certainly have the money to do it.
They have the money to do it, and they have the know-how, and they are, and KT, as he's called, the chairman, is very, very forward-thinking and very involved in things way beyond the resort industry. He owns Crystal Cruise Lines. They purchased a Dreamliner to go with that and had it built, customized. He owns, oil and mineral opportunities in parts of Malaysia and Indonesia. He's in the medical business. He's a big believer in progress and new science. He's an extraordinarily good guy.
Jan Jones is going to be on the program a little later this week. And I was curious from you, who do you think are going to be the United States companies that end up with a Japanese license at this point?
I don't want to guess, but
Who has the inside track then, do you think?
I think Genting is going to be successful. I just kind of believe at the end of the day, they're well liked, in that part of the world.
Las Vegas Sands?
I think Sands probably has a good chance. There's always a little bit of pushback, on companies doing too much business in China from a Japanese perspective. Wynn is certainly a player. Caesars is a player. But it could be someone out of the blue that we don't know about. It could be a Galaxy. It could be somebody like that. Who knows? But they're putting a lot of money in it and a lot of time in it and a lot of promises in it. And I think it's also going to depend on who their Japanese partners are.
Right.
They're going to
have to be a big part, isn't it?
They're going to have to have a good partnership agreement. So it'll come and it'll be another impactful thing.
All right, let's take a break. We'll get to politics right after this.
Nevada Newsmakers tapings in Las Vegas are brought to you by the Las Vegas Metro Chamber of Commerce.
I'm men's rights attorney Marilyn York, and because I represent men in all family law matters, women often call me gender traitor, woman hater, and even disgusting. So why represent men and target myself with these offensive monikers? It's simple. Children with fathers in their lives are 6 times less likely to drop out of school, 15 times less likely to go to prison, and 5 times less likely to commit suicide. So ladies, you can hate me, but please love your children more than you hate their fathers.
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Sig Rogich. He's the president of the Rogich Communications Group. So, in your opinion, has Nevada now turned blue?
Well, if it hasn't, it's right on the cusp. This election cycle is transformational, in my opinion, in Nevada history. And as long as the culinary is as active as they are and they support the Democrats as much as they do, it's very tough to overcome. I give them a lot of credit. When you have 6, 7, 8, 10,000 people walking door to door, it makes a big difference, impactful wise. So now you've got a legislative session coming ahead, and you've got a supermajority in the Assembly. You're 1 vote shy of that in the Senate, and you've got a Democrat governor. And he's a smart guy, and he's a deal maker. He likes to put things together, and likes to see results. So he's going to carve something out with some Republican to give them what they want, in my opinion. And he'll theoretically have supermajorities in both houses. And so all those bills that Brian Sandoval vetoed, I think there's 41 of them, they're all going to come back.
Do you have a concern that, like Harry Reid, when Harry Reid had 60 Democratic votes in the Senate, he had to deal with his own caucus, and a minimum of 3 of his caucus were negotiating with him over the over Obamacare. Mm-hmm. And so, is there a danger when one party has all 3, branches, that you can have as much dissension within the ranks that you might not have if you have the other party to be able to negotiate with?
Well, you do have that problem. You have a problem of overreach, if they have that kind of majority that they overreach and the state says no to it. But when you talk about issues like the minimum wage, that'll come up and probably pass. They're going to start to fool around with right to work. I'm not sure the state would accept that, but they're going to work on it. Labor doesn't want it, and they're committed to labor. You're going to have the call for a sanctuary state. Is that going to happen here? When those kinds of things happen, those can be overreach, and that can cause some problems. you're always going to have some disgruntlement, but basically they'll whip them back into line and they'll support the governor and they'll support the agenda. And I think that, you know, he's got a lot on his plate, but he's a fast study, very smart guy. He understands bureaucracy because Clark County is loaded with it.
Right.
You know, and this is, you know, the public works is probably one of the most bureaucratic operations ever. And I think he's going to have to understand that state governments have got a lot of those public works operations.
I was surprised to see Pete Ernott quoted, I think it was in the Nevada Independent, as saying that Dean Heller lost his Senate race because he didn't appeal enough to the women's vote. And I was kind of surprised because Pete and Dean are pretty close, and I was wondering why he didn't get that advice before the election rather than post-election.
Well, I think in Pete's defense, he probably did. He probably did give him that, and I think Dean probably listened to him. But perceptions are reality, you know, and there's a perception here going on that Republicans are anti-women for some reason, which could be, nothing could be further from the truth. But it's a momentum that got in the way, and he couldn't undo it. There are a lot of factors that got in here, but the primary reason, in my opinion, that we had problems down here is because the voter turnout models that were put together by the culinary trade unions down here and others made the difference. They just got their people to the polls. We had extraordinary turnouts, and you're going to see a lot more of that.
Now, you know, the pendulum always swings, and I'm not talking necessarily in the next 2 or 3 years, but over the long haul, the Hispanic vote really should belong to the Republicans.
It should. I've always said that. You know, I reached out to the Hispanics in the campaign in '84, the first time it has ever really been done to the extent that I did it. And I had to get a lot of approvals to do it. We spent several $1 million with specific ads in the Latino community. And I learned a lot about the dialects and the differences between Cubans and Mexicans and Honduran families and on and on and on. They all have their own way of talking and doing things. And I hired Lionel Sosa, who was an advertising company owner in San Antonio, and he appealed heavily to Hispanics and did Coca-Cola commercials and so forth. And we crafted things in those days to reach out, to do an outreach. But Republicans along the way are locked in on this issue of immigration, which doesn't play well. They're locked in on a few other issues that Hispanics feel are an affront to them, you know, and so until we get our house together, we're not going to have that support. But in terms of jobs, family, religion, those things that are fundamental, less taxes to the Republican Party, we're in lockstep.
President Trump has been a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. He's a builder. He's somebody who has negotiated with Democratic governments over the years in New York City. Would it surprise you at all to see him change positions? And now that you have a divided House in D.C., where the Democrats have taken the House, for him to change certain positions and end up cutting deals with the Democrats?
Well, I think he's going to have to cut some deals with Democrats because the House of Representatives, you know, the spending arm of Congress, you know, wants to be listened to, and he's not stupid. The one thing he's had with all those titles that you threw around that are consistent is lack of temperance. You know, I'm sure of it in business and in government. He's going to have to learn how to do that, in my opinion. I like a lot of the things he's done. The tax cut, I like what he's done to our NATO allies to tell them they got to pay their fair share. I like what he's doing in trying to fight for the future of America with China on this trade war and the fact that they're stealing our technology. And it goes on, but he steps on his own stories. You know, he could have a cure for cancer on Monday, and on Tuesday afternoon he'd say something silly and then nobody would read about it. Just the way he is. I'm not sure anybody can temper him, but until he learns that, you're always going to see this upheaval, and I think it plays right into Democrat hands.
And it's interesting because, for example, he has a lot of influential friends on the Las Vegas Strip who my understanding is that he talks to on a regular basis. And so you would think that there would be some tempering just from those conversations.
I think they give him advice like that. I don't think he can help himself sometimes. You know, he just gets out and thinks off the cuff or thinks out loud. And I guarantee there are moments when he wish he wouldn't have said things the way he said them. Like we all go through those moments in our lives, and I'm certain the president does too, because his are so, you know, covered so dramatically when he does them. But having said all of that, if the economy continues to do what it's going to do, if we have a deal with China here upcoming, this economy will skyrocket even beyond where it is right now. You know, it will explode.
It's interesting that you say that, and I don't disagree with you. It concerns me that the Chinese are very well aware politically of what needs people have. And, you know, Nevada is so invested in Macau, it concerns me with those licenses coming up for renewal over the next couple of years, that there could be jeopardy there for Nevada companies.
Well, I think that there's conditions on those licenses, and you're going to see some changes in Macau. It's my opinion anyway. We do a lot of work in China, and it's not going to surprise me if they ask some of these companies to bring in Chinese investors. It's not going to surprise me if the tax base that they're paying now goes up. It's not going to surprise me if they tell certain companies they can't have everything that they are planning to have. A lot of those things are going to happen, in my opinion. But I think that China needs this thing to end more than we do. We have a great economy and China does not. You know, they're propping up their currency as we speak, you know, so it's artificial there in China. But it's just the way he gets at it. You know, he airs it in the press, and that puts everybody at odds when they sit down at a table. There's no quiet negotiation that goes on. There was a lot less of that rancor, I think, with Mexico and Canada, which is why we have a new NAFTA pact.
Right.
And so I'm hopeful that the same kinds of things happen in all of these other issues on trade and on fair share.
And sadly, we're out of time, sir. It is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for doing this, as always.
You're welcome.
And we'll be right back.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
St. Ives Florist, for every holiday and every special occasion. For romance. Custom home design. We have the largest selection of fresh flowers in northern Nevada. And we also offer a large selection of unique gift items. Come see me, Lori Ann, at St. Ives Florist, 700 South Wells Avenue, or call me at 333-9190.
As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at nevadanewsmakers.com. You can also download podcasts of the show free of charge or watch us on YouTube. We'll see you on the next broadcast.